Hi, my name is Estelle Lucas, and welcome to the Bigger Sister channel, a community podcast for sex workers by sex workers. Today, we're going to talk about financial attitudes, and we're going to introduce our community manager to the show, Lex. But before that, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I am calling in from, which is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. This is the first episode that's being recorded in my bedroom with my pajamas and little Amelia, my cat, beside me. And I just want to give a disclaimer that nothing in this podcast is financial advice and that us workers are a diverse population. And not everyone's story is going to be relatable, but if we share enough stories, we are hoping that we can share our knowledge and understanding with our community. Lex, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lex. I am the community manager for the Bigger Sister channel, and I am recording from Brisbane in Meanjin for the land of the Turrbal people.
Nice. Can you explain to everyone listening in, what does a community manager do? What does that role entail?
So my job as the community manager is to establish the relationships with sex workers and sex worker adjacent businesses in order to help our sex worker community have access to easier financial advice and I guess just any sort of information that's going to help them manage their own business as a sole trader and a sex worker in the industry.
I like to just summarize it into Lex puts the community in the community project. It's a nice catchy way.
It is pretty cute.
But the reason why I wanted to interview Lex for this episode is because I know Lex has started her journey in her economic empowerment, and I think it'd be interesting to share someone's experiences on both the teaching and learning side, if you will, because we are both teaching and learning at the same time. With that in mind, can I ask you, why did you join the Bigger Sister team? What were your motivations? Yeah.
I have to admit that I really didn't know much about it when I first reached out to your tweet, I think it was, that you posted in response. You were kind of like, we just want to have some people who be happy to help and volunteer. And I was like, yes, I want to help the community. I had no idea what it was. I think the very first time that I'd even heard of Bigger Sister was the Ivy Ball earlier in the year, in February, and we all got these like really cute little goodie bags, and then inside it was some like Bigger Sister channel like little posters and some graphics and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I don't actually know what this is. But then yes, and when the call out went out again, I was like, yep, I think I want to help the community. I've always had that goal myself, but didn't know how to do it. And so for me, seeing someone who'd basically started what I wanted to do already was a good opportunity for me to put my hand up and be like, I want to help the community. I don't know how to. Can you please show me how?
Yeah. And that's kind of how I see my role as managing director, is I'm just like the organizer. I don't actually do anything. I just tell people what to do. And I just assure you every step of the way that you're doing it right. And that seems, and you do a better job than I would if I was in that role anyway. So,
I don't know about that. You're a pretty good talker. I mean, I guess we have that in common.
Yeah, we're both good shit talkers and inspirational talkers. And
yeah, we already talked for 20 minutes before we even started recording this podcast. So,
well, and we talk every week as well, but we still have to catch up on how you are, what's going on. It's important.
Of course, need a little rundown before you start to get to the important stuff.
Exactly. So before and after joining the team, can you describe to me, like, what was your financial situation? How did you think and feel about finance? What were your behaviors around finance? Because we know that one of the things that we're trying to achieve through the Bigger Sister channel is the economic empowerment education model.
Yes.
And I still haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do that, but I'm very confident that I will. And I'm very motivated. But I'd like to measure from where you started to where you are now, what's happened.
Yeah, I mean, it might not even seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but for someone like me who is very erratic with my spending, I take so many risks in what I do with my money and how I spend it and don't spend it. Um, bit
Can
more
you give us an
emphasis on
example?
a bit more emphasis on the spend it part. So until I took this role, up until I took this role, I had absolutely no idea about anything to do with managing my business as a sex worker. And it wasn't until Estelle introduced the financial attitudes that it kind of gave me a little bit more of a grasp on exactly what kind of person I am with my money. And so if you haven't taken the financial quiz, it's actually super fun to read about the style of person and the way that you do and don't allocate your money. So I took it, and I am mostly a Risky Misty. Basically, is someone who just takes a lot of unnecessary risks, really impulsive with their money. That sums me up to a T. To the point where in the past I have prioritized spending money on things that I want rather than things that I need.
Wow.
And so it would be the point somewhere where I would I really want this one particular thing. So I'm not going to pay this bill and that bill this week. Get this thing that I really want so that it satiates my need for
Dopamine.
well, yes, exactly. It's exactly what it was. And then I will deal with the consequences of not paying that bill later.
Yeah.
And that's basically how I've lived my adult life. Ever since I've had the ability to earn money, I have spent it just as quickly.
In one hand, out the other.
Yes. And it's been like that through most of my relationships. I haven't necessarily needed financial support from anyone else because while I am a risk taker with my money, I also make sure that I have what I need. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't neglect bills like my rent, for example, because that would potentially put me out of a house and having shelter. But I would probably more likely risk bills that were like maybe my phone bill
Mm,
or maybe my power bill. But
mm.
again, obviously these are really important bills still, but
You
I
can
knew
kind of
that
get
I
away
had a
with
little bit more time. Yeah, you can get extensions on things like that. You can get payment plans on things like that, but you can't really have a payment plan on your rent.
dancing on a razor's edge a bit.
Yes. And so I have always lived like that. And it wasn't until I started working for Bigger Sister Channel and doing a little bit of my own research and reading some of the research that the team has done as a collective that I realized that I don't need to do this and I shouldn't be living like this at all.
No.
To
But
the
it's the
point
only way you've known,
it
right?
is, I didn't know any better. I wasn't taught this in school. Like the school curriculum doesn't deal with managing finances, although it did teach me how to write a bank check. So that's clearly relevant to me now.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that was a great lesson. Don't teach budgeting,
Nah.
anything like that. I grew up in a separated household, so I didn't have a two-income family.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was constantly watching my mum struggle.
Yeah.
My dad definitely had a very greedy attitude towards money.
Mm. It's not help.
And so those were really the two people that I had to look up to as far as financial advice, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, I was never taught anything myself. And I'm in my 30s now, and I'm only just starting to learn that I want to do better for my kids. So I
Because you're
don't want
setting an
them growing up.
example.
Yeah, I don't want them growing up the same way I did, not knowing anything about budgeting, finances, purchasing, assets in the future, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely been a learning curve for me. And from where I started back in, I think it was April, it's been a few months. And just in that short few months, sorry, my cat's just messing with me. In that short few months, I have already, yours is nice and quiet. Mine is a naked baby running around the house. For those who didn't see, I have a Sphinx and he would like warmth right now that I'm not giving him. So in those short few months, I have now already managed to, I guess, familiarize myself with my bad habits, my bad spending habits, and try to put rules in place for me to look at what I'm doing before I actually take the step and do it without thinking. And I now have a little bit of money set aside as not necessarily a rainy day fund. I'm in the middle of moving house. It's there for a bond. And
Yeah.
in the past, I have never been able to apply for houses and rentals and things like that without the stress of where am I getting this money from? How am I going to do this? Do I have to apply for a bond loan? All that sort of stuff. And right now, I have that money sitting aside so that as soon as I get approved for a rental, I can be like, here's your bond.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
that's a big thing for me because I've never been able to do that in my life up until now.
And you figured it out all by yourself.
I would like to credit that to my working for Bigger Sister channel.
Well, we are working as a team. See, this is the tricky thing about teaching and learning at the same time is like we actually don't know what we don't know. So as we're learning, we're then distilling that information, refining it, synthesizing it to then present the best bits of it, the most relevant bits to our community. So you don't have to go through reams and reams of books and academic works to figure it all out. We do it for you. Turns out it's really hard. It's really, really hard.
Not only have I developed a small savings account, but I've also been able to track my incoming and outgoing a lot better. Whereas previous years, I was just kind of so blasé with my money. I always knew that I'd get money.
Yeah.
So I never really had any. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No. I like what you're saying because what you're talking about is, I would term it as fundamental beliefs and attitudes around money. And you have a very optimistic. So you always think money's going to be accessible to you, if that makes sense. Like things will always be okay. And that is an underlying belief that does determine your financial attitude when you're an adult. The other factors that you mentioned, like your parents, also inform how you think and feel about money in the future. And I think because you haven't experienced anything like too devastating, like a financial trauma that's absolutely made you think I'm never going to have a roof over my head ever again. Nothing's destroyed your soul that far, I don't think, at least not in this sphere. So there's that optimism is still alive, but it is unleashed. So it becomes risky and it becomes completely chaotic and it doesn't know when to stop. And this is a risky Misty. But the thing is, I really don't want to frame this in a negative way because we are conditioned from a very young age that if we're not doing things good, then it must be bad. And that's not necessarily true. What we do is informed by what we experience, and we didn't have a lot of control over that as a kid. We have a little bit more control as an adult. We can determine the conditions of our life. And if you choose to not grow, then that's a little bit on you. But we also need tools, encouragement, the community to make those changes. I think that's what this project, I'm hoping, will provide to sex workers, which we know is the most vulnerable.
100%.
And I, again, don't want to frame this in a negative way because there are times in life where you have to be risky. And you need to have trust and faith in the system, in yourself, in time, that things will be okay. Because if you live under this constant scarcity mindset and the constant memories and traumas, it's impossible to move forward. It's so hard to grow. So what is detrimental to you right now is going to be how someone orients themselves. They're going to have to look at you and go, I got to take a picture out of Lex's book. How does she operate? Like right now it's chaotic for you, but someone on the opposite side will look at you as an example and be like, okay, these are the attitudes that I need to adopt into my perspective to be able to have a more balance, because there is always times in life where you have to make risk. Investment is you talked about assets, no one knows there are some rules of what appreciates in value, but a lot of it is risk taking. And if you're so averse to risk, then you're not going to be able to grow wealth. It's going to be very difficult for you. So I think I've seen how much you've grown and changed in this time. And I respect your attitude, but it's about like, when is that attitude appropriate? And when do we need to reel it in a little bit?
Yeah, I definitely take unnecessary gambles. Not so much in, I would say, probably the last 6 to 8 months. And again, a lot of that really hinges on working for Bigger Sister Channel and realizing my attitude around finances now. But from last year backwards, everything was always a risk and a gamble. I would make so many stupid decisions and purchases that I just didn't need, because I, in the back of my mind, have always had that whole, it'll come back to me somehow. Like, I'll get another client, I'll get another
work hard as
something.
well, so you can compensate a lot of the time for those decisions.
Yeah, I've made purchases in the past with my previous 2 relationships. I have solely supported that person.
Oof.
As a single, I was going to say, as a single mum supporting 2 children, and then also having
You adopted.
exactly, voluntarily supporting a third dependent
Adult.
throughout 2 relationships of mine where they just weren't working, or they were working but their money had to go elsewhere. And so on top of that, also supporting another person who was physically capable of making money themselves but just chose not to. That also really affected my decision making when it came to money.
Yeah. Okay. So, for those that don't know, I would highly recommend, if you're listening to this or watching this, to look at the graph that I made that sort of really simplifies how financial attitudes can be thought about. It's like an X and Y axis, and there's 4 quadrants. Risky Misty's at the top left, and to the top right, you've got Good Girl Pearl, who is also a risk taker, but doesn't really value money, doesn't really get a dopamine hit on it. And I would say where you're going, Lex, is more towards that sort of that right side, towards Good Girl Pearl, because remember, our perspectives and attitudes are not fixed states. We can actually change them consciously. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier. But what you just mentioned about relationships, using money to manage relationships, bonds with people, social contracts, that is a Good Girl Pearl move. Like, that is, I value people over money. And that's why, couple that with your Risky Misty, attitude, and you've got, like, you're making decisions for other people from the goodness of your heart, but they're actually not maybe the best decisions for your personal finance, but it's a sacrifice that you're willing to make. But that to me is just information and data that tells me you are willing to invest in yourself because you've done it for others.
Yeah, I guess so. I never really thought about it like that. I kind of looked more at the negatives of me supporting others rather than the positives, the way it reflected back on me.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
So obviously I was focusing more on what I was missing out on and what I was not able to provide for myself and my kids by having to support
Oh,
another person.
yeah.
So by me having to pay this person's bills and buy
Yeah.
this
All right.
and that for that extra person, I was like, I'm now not being able to provide me with a little bit of extra money or my kids with this little bit extra of whatever, rather than it being I'm supporting this other person because I have that capability and you don't. And I would rather see you get your basic needs met than me have extra things that I don't need.
Yeah. Okay.
So I
That's
guess it was
really,
kind of a little bit more of a selfish
I
review
see.
of.
This is really interesting. So the part of the reason why the economic empowerment unit education material as we're creating content is getting, for me at least, it's getting more and more convoluted, is because we get these like crosshairs of issues, and like what you've just mentioned is something that I would say is either called financial advantage or financial, I don't want to say the word abuse, but I don't have the literacy to the actual word. There is probably a
It,
word that's in between this.
I feel like manipulation. It's kind of financial manipulation to a point.
It's not outright financial abuse, but it's like when you feel so guilty. I think about the people that I grow up with, right? My friends that don't have money. I got access to money by virtue of being a sex worker. And if I want to do anything with my friends, I have to pay for it, because that's what I want to do. They can't do it. Like they can't, and I can't ask them to put like weeks of pay aside to do this fun thing with me. I have to meet them 80%
Yeah,
of the day.
I know what you mean because I've actually had something similar with a few of my friends and my family, my brother especially. My family, when it comes to money, they rely on me.
Mm,
When they want to borrow money, they come to me. Me having a very unstable and unreliable income,
mm,
him being a full-time employed contracted tradesman,
mm,
bad financial attitude, doesn't know how to doesn't know how to manage his own money because again, obviously we grew up with the same parents as influence on our spending and our money habits. And so we're very similar. Um, and I guess I could probably use him as a point of growth to see how far I've come in comparison to where he still sits.
Oh, wow. So actually, this is so synonymous with my experience because I also have a brother and we also had the same parents, but my brother and I kind of landed in two different spots, if that makes sense. Like same
Mm-hmm.
traumas, different reactions. And I think it's got to do with the age gap and where we sit in the sibling, hierarchy. He was the oldest, I was the youngest. So he protected me when I was younger. He sacrificed a lot of his childhood for adult responsibilities to protect me and, make up for the lacking of the parents. And as a result has slingshotted into a risky Misty, basically, like
Right.
you, because he didn't have that opportunity of that freedom, nothing. And he does, and he has the capacity to make so much money because he's a full-time tradesman as well. And they can make good money. My brother's like 3 trades. So he can actually make thousands of dollars in any job because he'd be like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. We have great work ethics. The Turks do. But he doesn't know how to spend or manage his money and the responsibility, even the thought of it, he's like, but my reaction to that was I just saw how money was hurting my family and I hated how stressed everyone was over it. So I was like, you know what? If it's making everyone feel this bad, it can also make people feel this good. So I'm just going to take away the problem, which is the money, right?
Yeah.
And then and then that has been the basis of a lot of our relationship is me bailing his ass every time he makes a bad decision because I can and I have to, and that's like the financial relationship that we have. And like you mentioned, you
It's that
can make
imbalance of power as well, the exchange through different life experiences. You helped me do this, so I'll help you do this.
I'm currently working on the next content script for the economic empowerment program, which talks about financial attitudes and our childhood and our upbringing. And I do bring up my relationship with my brother because it's the best way that I can sort of explain how how much this affects me to this very day. But like you mentioned, you can see from where you started to where you ended how much you've changed. If I like, sometimes it's so hard to look at the mirror and confront yourself and your own behaviors, but if you can look at how you sort of treat other people, you sort of get a better idea. And I thought that me and my brother resolved a lot of our issues, because a lot of the toxic behaviors that we had for many years, I would say he saw how much I was working to save his ass, and I think he, you know, made correct changes because he didn't want to see me suffer anymore, basically. But we haven't really discussed it to great depths about how that affected me, and also I actually never said no. So I really haven't learned. He was the one that said, do you know what I mean? He was the one that stopped taking advantage of me. I never actually had to put down a boundary. So I kind of cheated there.
I feel like I've had to in the past, just because I'm the kind of person that will give my last $50 to someone who I think needs it. I will take that off myself and take away my comfort and security in order to provide it for someone else. And I've done that plenty of times in the past, not only for my brother, but also for my mother.
Yeah.
Because again, she was someone who I grew up was always getting payments from the government. She now works at, her job is part-time driving taxis, which makes no money at all. And is the carer for my grandmother.
Yeah, okay.
And so there has always been a little bit of part-time work, but mostly government benefits. And so I've really wanted to get out of that cycle. And obviously when I was younger and was raising kids and not working and not had the ability to work, I was getting government benefits. But one of my big financial wins in the last financial year has been that I stopped receiving government payments. And so I have been solely surviving on my sex worker income.
Yeah. And that's so hard because you're a parent as well and you wear so many hats, and
it's hard not having that knowledge of backup. Yeah. Like if I don't get a job, there's no, oh, that's okay because I get like my family tax benefit this week. It's gone. I don't have that
security.
I don't have that safety net anymore. And I think that was one of the good things, because it pushed me to know that I need to do this and I need to make money in order to survive, rather than just be like, oh, it'll be all right. I'll just get this. I don't have to worry about it. And so it's been a good thing for me, because it drives me to be like, well, fuck, if I don't make this money, no one else is going to give it to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's wrong because men do give it to me, but
I know what you mean. No, I know what you mean. It's okay.
I have to put in some groundwork and I have to do some level of relationship development in order to earn money.
Yeah. Sorry, I feel like you were about to say something and I interrupted.
No, I don't think so. It was just more of a rounded story to get back to the fact that I still have my younger brother, not by much, borrowing money off me occasionally, to the point where I had to be like, hey, listen, you have the full-time reliable income. I don't. I haven't worked in 2 weeks. Why are you asking me for money?
It's also, you know what it also is? Sometimes when, especially if they get a bit like, but you make more money than blah, blah, blah. It's like, but you also don't have to live with the risk. You don't have to live with the stigma. You don't have to live with the discrimination. You get to take that money, walk away, never think about it again. Even if I decide to stop doing the work today, will have this overshadowing the rest of my life. And
I think that's one
easy money.
I think that's one of the biggest things, though, is the difference between getting regular income into a bank account versus getting physical cash in your hand.
Oh my God. Changes your everything.
It really does. Getting money into a bank account, I don't think really registers to a lot of people how much money is there, because you get it and you spend it and it's just sort of a little bit of a number on a screen. Yeah, 100%. And so when you get physical cash in your hand and you've got to hand it over to things and you see that depleting as you're holding it, as you're taking it out of your wallet and putting things back into your wallet, it goes down. And so I think, obviously I'm assuming, but when I get my cash and I come home and I kind of put it on the bench or whatever, and he'll walk over and my brother's like, oh, is any of that for me? What the fuck why would it be for you? Did you go and do the job that I just did to earn this money? No, you did not. And so it's that kind of like, well, look at how much money you just earned.
Yeah, but there's
Whereas
so
he
much,
could have double that in his bank account, but it doesn't make a difference because it's in front of him and it's tangible.
Yeah, it's I really, to be honest, I'll tell you some insight from my research that I've been doing for the Economic Empowerment Unit, that there's a lot of resources out there, right? So I'm at the stage where I'm reading the research, synthesizing it all, presenting it all. There's very little stuff on cash money and the way that impacts behavior, feelings, and thoughts. Very little.
It makes a huge difference.
And that's the only gap in the literature that I've been able to identify. And I'm like, oh my God, do I have to make new content, like genuinely new content, to explain how to work through these things? Because I definitely, the first time I noticed the impact that I suppose it has to your feelings and your thoughts is when I've done a big booking, let's say an overnight, and they've prepaid it. And I've gone home and I've got no big stack of cash to count and be like, whew, that cost me a part of my soul, but look at this. And I have nothing. And I feel like, I honestly feel robbed or scammed, and I feel icky. And I'm like, what? But I did get paid. Why is this? And I had to interrogate myself.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing that society has come into now with the buy now, pay later, like get it right now sort of thing, like the afterpays and the zip pays and things like that, because you get it and you buy it, and then the idea is that, oh, well, I didn't just spend $400 because I'm paying it off. And so it's a similar thing when someone pays off a booking or prepays a booking, you feel like that you haven't just spent that money, like you haven't just been paid that money. And I feel like the same is happening in reverse when you pay off something.
It's like they're hacking the feeling, which would normally be like, you can't afford that, you shouldn't do that. It's like, well, I always have outgoing fees, and this is just another added extra to the outgoing fees.
Paying something off $5,000 in one go is a totally different psychological understanding than paying $100 off this $5,000 purchase for multiple payments.
Exactly.
And so it, in the same aspect, I guess it's a booking that gets paid off before the booking happens, and not walking away with something physical in your hand to show for that. It was the same sort. Yeah.
It was a bit distressing. I really had to sit with myself and be like, Estelle, what's going on here?
No, wait, I did get paid for this. I just don't have it in my hand.
Yeah. Like what is, but I've already also spent it in a way, because the way I think about money is, once it's on a screen, it's in a savings account usually. And I only have like a very small amount that I play around with. So I was just like, did I just do this for free? Like, what is going on? Took me a while to wrap my head around that one.
I totally understand. I know exactly that feeling that you're explaining. Yeah.
Something that I really did want to do with this podcast is I wanted every sex worker to feel welcome on it. I actually had another sex worker in mind that I wanted to interview, but just the stars haven't aligned, and I am going overseas very soon. So I wanted to do this before I jetted off. And because I really want to investigate different sex workers' feelings, attitudes, perspectives, thoughts, the psychology behind their decision-making processes.
Even someone with the same financial attitude can have two totally different approaches.
Exactly. And so I really wanted to get into that nuance through storytelling.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy to hear your story. But what I also want to do is re-interview people after a few months, especially after having these conversations, getting those wheels in your head turning. I mean, I feel like we've already done it a bit, because once you join the team, that's really when you sort of started showing up for yourself in a different way. and you said to yourself, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I think there can be a better way. And you're testing and you're trialing, and sometimes it's like one step back, but then it's like two steps forward. So it's I feel like we've done that a little bit. I would be interested in interviewing you again later on.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is having to be accountable to someone else is a big help for me, because as much as I am the risk taker and my life experiences have played into that, a lot of what I've realized in recent years is, after being diagnosed with ADHD and autism, that also plays a big thing. Yeah, it plays a big part of how I view the concept of money and my bills and luxury items.
Yeah.
And because of the way that I've lived my whole life without this diagnosis, and then getting the diagnosis and now realizing my financial attitude and learning this entire new thing, I think 20 years ago, 15 years ago, that wouldn't have been something that I even thought about listening to. If someone had told me I had ADHD then, someone had told me that I spend money impulsively, I just would have been like, yeah, and continued to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not until later in my life that I've had to appreciate money, because I've realized just how big of a role it has in your life.
It does. And it's like modern day magic. It doesn't have to be that hard. It's not easy though. That doesn't make it easy, but it doesn't have to be that hard either. I think there are more effective ways to use your money, and that you can get more value from the way you operate in your day-to-day and the way you manage your own finance. And I think until you take a conscious effort every day, you are probably most likely going to land in the least convenient spot that you possibly can.
Like you said, that we're not financial advisors, but I definitely credit my recent achievements to you and the Bigger Sister team.
That's good. I'm so happy to hear that. Speaking of which, can you enlighten us on some of the maybe things or tools, practices, thoughts, little interventions that you are incorporating to improve your, I don't know, behavior or your outlook? Or I know you said accountability was a huge one.
For sure.
But is there any other, like, I guess, tips you could give people, things that you're trying, things that you tried and didn't make it work?
One of the things that I tried that did work was when I did a no spend challenge. And because I was reporting my my findings, I guess, back to the team, it made me that bit more accountable than if I wasn't actually telling anyone else about it.
Yeah.
And so I did a no spend challenge a few months ago, and I think it was June, where I stopped buying clothes for myself, because one of my dopamine things is I buy clothes all the time, unnecessarily. I have so many things in my wardrobe that I don't already wear, that I still see things and go, ooh. And so for this particular challenge, I picked one thing, clothes, and decided that instead of purchasing it, I would look through the apps like I normally do, add them to the cart like I normally do. But instead of checking out, I would take that money. So I would look at the cart, look at the total, and say it was $200. I would take that $200 out of my bank account and put it in a different account. So in my brain, I've spent that $200 on those things that I added to my cart without physically purchasing them.
It's actually a really good psychological hack, because your mind's not really going to be able to tell the difference between.
I still got the dopamine hit of like, I just bought this.
Exactly.
Because for me, the thrill of buying things isn't receiving them on the day.
No,
yeah, that's
you
fun.
You forget you've even brought them by the next day.
Yeah, so it's like an extra. That's the added surprise, getting the item delivered. But for me, the biggest part is purchasing it and seeing the money come out of my bank account and being like, I just bought something. It could be the stupidest thing ever. Like, I'm not going to use this item, but I bought it because I wanted to in that moment.
Yeah.
And so instead of spending it like I normally would, I took that money out of an account and my main account, and I put it in an account that's not attached to a card.
Yes.
And so I put it into an account, and by the end of the month, I think, so I had about $350 in 1 month.
Nice. Could you
Because-
imagine if you had invested $350 every month since you were 20 or something? You'd
Right.
be
Yep.
a millionaire by now.
It made me realize how many purchases that I was making that I just don't need to make. Because once you take it and you add it up, you're like, oh, shit, that's a lot of money. I mean, the next thing, like, I don't smoke, but if I was a smoker, if I stopped buying a packet of cigarettes every time that I went to go and get a smoke, obviously it's not something that I can speak for because I'm not addicted to cigarettes, nicotine. So it'd be a lot harder for me. Giving up energy drink would be fucking hard. It's the caffeine, it's the sugar, so if I stopped buying V as regularly as obviously some people smoke, that money slowly adds up. I mean, it's like $10 for a 4-pack. If I maybe spend that every 2 to 3 days on a 4-pack, that's like $60-$70 a week. Putting that aside, again, that money adds up, and it gets to a point where you go, that you just really don't notice how much you spend on little bits here and there until it's one lump sum.
Yeah, this is also why we really want to take a holistic approach when we're talking about economically empowering ourselves, because I think if we do any like huge radical changes, it's just going to not glue and it's not going to stick. And we want long-term wealth, feelings of wealth. And in some realities, you know, that V maybe costs a lot of money, but it got you through that moment, and that was the more important thing. So it's like another thing that we're going to learn is not necessarily even got to do with money, but it's about discerning what's important and what's not, and being a little bit more aware in our decision-making process. So it does add up, but it's also like you can't completely punish yourself for, you don't drink those drinks for the fun of it. You drink those drinks because you need it.
Yeah.
So as soon as you identify what need is this doing, like what is it serving, and what can I replace it with, because you can't just run on empty, right? So you need to sort of nourish and replenish it yourself, but in something that's a little bit more holistic, a little bit healthier, and a little bit more cost effective.
Yeah, I definitely think that taking small steps and cutting out unnecessary spending before you kind of realize the biggest spending things that you do and be like, right, I spend this much money on X, I can cut that out and save this amount. That's really not going to be helpful because it's not a small step. Doing something so big so fast is going to have a negative impact.
I think so. I think it's also going to build a bit of resentment or distrust with yourself because you said you're going to do something and you failed, and then like that's going to put you into a negative spiral. I am much more like, let's have really modest, tiny little goals, and let's never stop. Let's slow down when it gets too much, but let's never stop. Just keep.
Yeah. If you save $10 a week buying saving on things that you would purchase, like if you buy 3 coffees in a day, buy 2 coffees in a day and put that extra $5 away for the 3rd coffee. And then if you do that multiple times, you go like, here is $50 that I didn't spend on coffee this week.
100%. And then you would take it the next step, which would be like, let's do a decaf for that 3rd. And then it would be, okay, let's take away that 3rd. Like, it doesn't have to be like, I'm not drinking coffee anymore. There's no reason why it has to be done painfully.
Reducing rather than just cold turkey nothing is a lot better at achieving long-term results.
I think.
I mean, and that's been proven. Some people can just do cold turkey for things, and other people need to ease before it becomes something that they're psychologically accustomed to doing.
You've just reminded me, actually, I had to get rid of the vapes because I can get addicted to nicotine. I have a very addictive personality. I get addicted to anything, like literally just a shiny ball. I'm like, oh, like sweet words of nothing. Like just,
this is why we get along. We're the same person.
Exactly. From the same pie, just different slices. But I think the last vape that I had, I've been really run down. This is why I'm going overseas. I need to refill my cup. But when I finished the vape, I was like, immediately I was like, I want another one. And then I really had to intervene and be like, Estelle, I know you don't like it when someone tells you what to do, including yourself, but you can get a vape. I'm not telling you not to, but if you get a vape, you will get sick.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, I won't get sick. And I'm like, you have never gotten a vape and not gotten sick from it. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like,
also you're psychologically telling yourself that too.
But no, I really do get like my whole throat, like it's really, because I'm even compromised as well. It's actually really bad. And I just go, no, I'm tough. I can take it anyway. So I had to cold turkey that. But that's because I know with me, access is very important. If I have access, I can't stop myself. So with me, it's like I have to go cold turkey with these things. However, in saying that, because I have a very retaliatory, like reverse psychology works wonders on me. Let's put it that way. So if I said to myself, no, you can't ever smoke again, I'll just want to more. So I just go, okay, we're going to take away the access, which is going to almost feel like cold turkey. But if I really wanted, I could go to a friend and ask if I could have a bit of theirs. I don't stop myself from just the purchase of it. That's, I know where the real detriment.
That's enough of a boundary for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm excited to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing your story. I usually wrap up what we discussed, but I feel like I can't remember.
If we start to wrap up, we're just going to continue in this vicious cycle of repeating. Yeah. I look forward to being able to come back as another guest in a few months' time and report my growth.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Lex. I want to see what you tested, trialed. I want to see what happened. With that said, if you're a sex worker and any of this resonated with you, please share the episode. Or if you're not a sex worker, it doesn't really matter. But if you want to join the podcast, I want you to, send me, like Estelle, me, an email. Let me know, because I am always looking for new guests, and I am trying to make this your community podcast where you can share your stories, your voices in a safe environment. And thank you for joining us. You
can also email me.
Oh, yeah,
I'm the community manager.
We also have a community manager who's really good at connecting people to different parts of the
she wouldn't have said that if I wasn't here.
Anyways, okay, so if you haven't already, please follow our TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, blog on Substack. We have a hopefully weekly videos on YouTube. I need to talk to you about that, Lex, about the latest episode that you have filmed. Stay tuned for that. And we're going to learn in small increments. We're going to learn through storytelling. We do have a newsletter that's coming with the new website. Sign up by going to biggersister.com.au. And I think that's it for tonight. It's late. It's 10 o'clock.
Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah. And
our shit talking and rambling in amongst the little bit of hopefully helpful information.
I think it's going to resonate with some people. At least we're getting the conversation started. And yeah, I have a good night. Bye.